Apparently the Enabling Act is happening. Apparently the Enabling Act is happening right now, or like very soon. Basically, the Trump administration is asserting massive new powers to control federal spending unilaterally, and many devs view the shutdown bill as their only possible point of leverage. We'll see what they do soon. President Donald Trump needs Senate Democrats' votes to keep the government funded and open this week, but a group is still agonizing over whether to use this rare point of congressional leverage to extract concessions from Republicans and risk taking blame for a government shutdown. Some argue that voting for a bill to fund the government through September would empower Trump to dismantle more of the federal government. Others contend a shutdown would hurt federal workers and the government even more. These people are fucking... I don't even have a word for it. Stupid doesn't feel right. These people are just liars. They're just enablers. They're collaborators. They're literally saying they're going to fire half of the Department of Education. How could a short shutdown for a week hurt more than getting fired? What? Senate Democrats are under pressure from grassroots liberals to join House Democrats in withholding their votes. Activists want Democrats to negotiate language and funding bills that explicitly bar Elon Musk's Doge service from impounding any congressionally mandated funds in a bid to slow the Trump administration's unlawful layoffs and cuts. What the fuck? This is really the only significant point of leverage the congressional Democrats have this year, says Ezra Levin, co-founder of the grassroots liberal group Indivisible. It's crazy to me that any Democrat would be like, yeah, let's vote for it. Have some respect for yourself. Some Democrats think they must surrender that leverage to avoid what could be a chaotic and politically risky shutdown. Bitch, there's no elections! What are you talking about? There's no election! What? Republicans need 7 Democrats to pass their funding bill through the Senate on Friday. Oh my God. One Republican, Rand Paul, said he's opposed. They even have a Republican! They even have a Republican on their side! What are you talking about? Oh my God. If Democrats shut down the government to demand guardrails around Musk, they risk taking the blame. They're gonna try to blame you anyway! What are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? If you're concerned about the economy teetering on recession, imagine what would happen if you shut the government down. John Fetterman. Your son is going to have a birthday party soon. He's going to be the center of attention, John Fetterman. Your son's going to have a birthday party soon, and he'll be the center of attention. Hey, John Fetterman, your son might be the center of attention. Does that make you feel a little bit out of place? He's the only Democrat who has publicly said he will vote for the bill, calling it a vote against it, a vote for chaos. This guy is the dumbest, most evil motherfucker in the entire Senate. I don't feel that we've got leverage. If you're in Colorado, call John Hickenlooper right fucking now. If you're in Colorado, call John Hickenlooper right fucking now. If you're in Colorado, call him right fucking now. This is how you find it. You search John Hickenlooper office number. I want you to call his DC office. Oh, no. There it is. Watch it. He's in the Hart Senate office building. His phone number is 202-224-5941. If you're in Colorado, call this motherfucking worthless, spineless fuck moron piece of shit and demand he vote to shut down the government unless they get guardrails to protect the federal workforce. What a fucking loser. Democrats need to defend the spending authority that framers gave Congress, Hickenlooper said. We have to respect the balance of power that the Constitution describes. Once you start throwing out the Constitution, who knows what's next? Yeah, you have the leverage, you dumb piece of shit. Senate minority leader Chuck Schumer has declined to say whether he advised members to vote against the bill. Call this motherfucking loser. Call this motherfucking loser. Schumer's neutral position has alienated others in the conference, according to two people familiar with the situation who spoke on the condition of anonymity. You fucking cowards! Some Democratic senators are furious at Schumer for not having a strategy and message to counter the House Republican bill. Fire his ass! What the fuck is this shit? The Democratic Party is completely useless. The Democratic Party is completely fucking useless. Others argued that allowing the government to shut down would hurt federal workers and give Trump and Musk a freer hand to shutter. How? What are you talking about? Why would I give to Article 2 branch the power to rewrite all the budgetary decisions I make? I just cannot see my way to doing that. If Senate Democrats provide the votes, they would likely face an enraged grassroots next week at town halls during the congressional recess. Those liberal voters are aghast as Trump administration continues to overrule congressional appropriations, firing federal workers and canceling funds. Anyone who's dumb enough to vote for this sure as hell is going to own the consequences. This bill is a permission slip to do so much destruction that will take us years and years to undo. Shame on any Democrat who even thinks about voting for it. It's hard to fathom how distant they'll need to be from their own constituents to approve the bill, he added. All I could see is if they pass this fucking bill, if Democrats pass this fucking bill, it's beyond Jover. It is beyond fucking Jover. Yeah, we saw Zoran vote yelling at Homan.
And Schumer is a Palestinian, as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian. Okay.
By the way, chat, this is, if you're a Jewish person, you should understand that this is Hitlerian. Right? This is Hitlerian. This is basically Donald Trump saying that anybody who disagrees with me is not a real Jew. The Nazis also said the same thing, actually. Funnily enough, the Nazis said the same thing. The Nazis would say, like, the super Orthodox Jews aren't as bad as the secular Jews. This is something the fucking Nazis said. Somebody on Blue Sky wants an AOC Walls ticket for 2028. Ugh. Ugh. Depending upon what they ran on, you know, I mean, that would be certainly not great, but I would have to see what exactly they were saying, you know. That's the thing. I don't care about personalities. I'm going to say this again. I don't care about personalities. I care what they believe in. What they're arguing for. TYT is a good example of this. The more views they espouse that are anti-left, the more their regular viewership drops. They get clicks on YouTube for the drama of it, but they've lost a true dedicated following. Well, not only that, they're incoherent. Like TYT's political views are now incoherent. And it's because they lack socialism. They lack dialectical materialism. They lack a meta-narrative. If you lack a meta-narrative, you're going to be tossed by the waves of public opinion and experience. You're not going to be able to interpret things. That's why people, you know, it's so funny because that's also where conservatism is right now. Conservatism we are in postmodern conservatism. They don't actually believe in anything. It's like their version of Christianity is a bumper sticker on the truck next to the truck nuts. They say, I'm a Christian. What type of Christian? Do you believe that the Pope is the vicar on earth and is infallible on his interpretations of scripture and moral teaching? Do you believe that the church in Rome is the forebearer of the Antichrist? Do you think Joseph Smith and was a new prophet for the revelation in America? Do you believe that the church in Rome was corrupted, but everything else is pretty good? Like what are you talking about? Which Christianity do you believe? Do you believe women can be pastors? Or do you believe it should be celibate men? Do you believe in the in the sacrament? Do you believe in infant baptism or adult baptism? Do you believe in any, what type of Christianity are you talking about? And this is the reality, is that they say Christian, but it doesn't mean anything. It's an empty signifier. It's a postmodern version of Christianity. It is simply it is an identifier that is pseudo blood. They'll say, I'm Christian. And what they mean by that is it stands in for like a blood and soil thing. Like, this is the reality of our politics today, is like conservatism it's a conservatism of blockbuster video reopening. It doesn't mean anything.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez in Chicago. Hi, Juan.
Hi, Amy, and welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
A federal judge has...
It depends on the medium. Yes, true.
Blocked the deportation of Mahmoud Khalil, the recent Columbia University graduate who was arrested over the weekend by immigration agents for helping organize campus solidarity protests with Gaza last year. Khalil is a permanent legal resident. He has a green card. His wife is a U.S. citizen who's 8 months pregnant. Khalil was arrested Saturday at his university-owned apartment. He's now being held in a federal jail for immigrants in Louisiana. President Trump boasted of Khalil's arrest, posting on social media, quote, "This is the first arrest of many to come," unquote. On Monday, faculty at Columbia University and Barnard College held an emergency press conference where they were joined by rabbis and immigrant rights advocates. This is Nadia Abu El-Haj, co-director of the Center for Palestine Studies at Columbia.
Mahmoud Khalil has been a public face of the student movement at Columbia Barnard since last spring. During the encampment, he served as the lead negotiator with the Columbia administration. A mature and gentle human being and a politically sophisticated thinker, Mahmoud tried his best to bring a peaceful end to that encampment. In the same spirit, Mahmoud tried to negotiate a resolution between students and the Barnard administration last week during a sit-in at Milstein Hall.
Yenon Cohen is a professor of Israel and Jewish studies at Columbia University.
Rescinding visas, canceling green card, and intimidating students and staff have become the tool of choice for stifling free speech and undermining the First Amendment. Columbia University includes Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, and athletes, and none of us will be safe unless we're all safe.
Over 1,000 protesters also gathered at Federal Plaza in New York Monday to demand Mahmoud Khalil's release. These are some of the voices from the protest.
Hands off Mahmoud Khalil! Hands off Mahmoud Khalil! ICE off our campus now! ICE off our campus now!
My name's Leanne Fullahan. I'm with the People's Forum. The larger context from even before this weekend, I think, is important. The DOJ has been threatening to deport students who have stood up for the Palestinian people over the past 18 months. They have been calling them pro-Hamas. They have been saying they are anti-Semitic. They have been trying to demonize the students in the face of the American public. They said to Israeli media that they intend on putting these students in jail not for 24 hours, but for years. The Columbia administration has been cracking down on the students without even provocation from the federal government. I mean, they only lasted one day before they brought the NYPD onto campus to suppress the encampment. Columbia has absolutely been part and parcel of this crackdown on the students.
My name is Murad Awauda. I am the president and CEO of the New York Immigration Coalition. It is incredibly shameful that our communities have to continue to endure under this fascist regime simply to deliver on a publicity stunt of a campaign called mass deportation. The message that they are trying to send, which is a deplorable one, is that no one is protected under free speech in this country anymore.
Hands up for students now!
I'm going to call up now an experienced leader in the immigrant rights movement, Ravi from the New Sanctuary Coalition.
They want to terrorize us. They want to intimidate us. This is my home. I was born in Trinidad, but this is my home. This is Khalil's home. This is Mahmoud's home. Right? We have been here. We are making this our community. You all are part of that community. We are going to stand up. We are going to fight.
Hello, guys
we are
and
not
gals.
going to allow this agency, this administration to instill fear. We are not fearful. We are strong. We are unafraid. And we are going to stand up and fight. Free Mahmoud.
Release Mahmoud Khalil now!
My name is Alexa Vilas. I am a council member representing District 38 in South Brooklyn. We are standing here in support of a free Palestine. We are standing, demanding the freedom of Khalil. If they cannot hear us, we must be louder. We must organize. They are coming for all of us. And it is us who will protect each other. ICE and the Trump band of bigots have no place here in New York City.
On Monday, the news outlet Zateo reported Mahmoud Khalil had emailed Colombia's interim president, Katrina Armstrong, one day before ICE detained him to ask her to protect him after he was targeted in a doxing and smear campaign. Khalil wrote, quote, "I haven't been able to sleep, fearing that ICE or a dangerous individual might come to my home. I urge you to intervene and provide the necessary protections to prevent further harm," he said. Meanwhile, DropSite News reports the ICE agent who detained Khalil was Ilvin Hernandez, who was honored by Trump during his State of the Union address in 2019, was when Trump was first president. We're joined now by two guests. Murad Awalda is president of the New York Immigration Coalition, longtime Palestinian-American activist. We just saw him in that clip speaking to the crowd yesterday. And Ramzi Qasim is a professor of law at CUNY, the City University of New York, where he founded the legal clinic CLEAR. The acronym stands for Creating Law Enforcement Accountability and Responsibility. Its mandate is to support Muslims and all other communities targeted by local, state, or federal government agencies under the guise of national security and counterterrorism, unquote. On Monday, CLEAR and the Center for Constitutional Rights filed a federal habeas petition in the Southern District of New York challenging Mahmoud Khalil's detention. Ramzi Qasim, let's begin with you. If you can explain what has taken place in the last days, from Mahmoud Khalil's arrest in Columbia housing after directly appealing to Colombia's president to protect him, right through to the judge yesterday enjoining his deportation and your emergency submission.
Thank you, Amy. I can start with what happened to Mahmoud and his wife. On Saturday night, they were walking home. As you mentioned earlier, Mahmoud is a U.S. permanent resident. His wife is a U.S. citizen who is 8 months pregnant. This is the family. They were expecting their first child next month. They had every reason to look forward to that momentous event. And they're coming home on a Saturday night around 8 p.m. As they're about to enter their building is when they're approached by men in plain clothes who subsequently identify themselves as DHS agents. And what they say is that they're going to take Mahmoud away because his student visa has been revoked. His wife protested and said that he doesn't have a student visa. He's a permanent resident. He has a green card. She goes upstairs to their apartment, gets the green card, shows it to the agent. The agent seems confused, calls his superiors, who apparently ordered him to take Mahmoud anyway. And so from her perspective, understandably, her husband was abducted before her very eyes, disappeared to a location in downtown Manhattan. And later that evening, our colleagues and co-counsel Amy Greer and Kyle Barron filed a habeas corpus petition in federal court in Manhattan on his behalf, asking for him to be released. And what the government did within hours of that is to move him 1,000 miles away from that courthouse down to Louisiana to complicate, interfere with his access to the court, with his access to his legal team, with his access to his wife and to his family and to his support network. So what we ended up having to do yesterday, unfortunately, is filing a motion with that same court, asking basically for the court to order the government to return Mahmoud to New York so that he can have access to his legal team, so that he can have access to the court, and so that the court can vindicate his constitutional rights. The court has already issued an order yesterday scheduling a hearing for Wednesday. And also,
it goes right to a private prison. Geo Group, by the way, chat, that's a private prison. So not only did they kidnap him, they profited from it. All right, what's this guy's? Okay, this guy seems very, very angry. What's he talking about? You can bang your bongos all you want. The fascists are going to laugh at you and keep doing what they want. What is your opinion on a non-violent protest being useless? Okay, that's not correct. That's not correct. That's a wrong opinion. That's a wrong opinion. There has to be what's known as an escalation. This is a big, basically what's happening right now is a conversation for the attention of the country. If people went out there and started machine gunning down ICE agents, the country would be radicalized against them. They would use that as a Reichstag fire moment. What people have to do is go out there and protest, and they have to be seen to follow as many of the rules as possible so that when everybody sees them get brutally repressed, everybody understands that that Trump and his regime are in the wrong. That's how you build public support for your position. You don't just go in there into maximalism, because you'll be defeated. Violence is not something that you use lightly. And even if you did that, let's just entertain it for a moment. Let's say that I got 20 people together. No, sorry, not me. Let's just say 20 people got together and they did an organized commando raid on the ICE detention center and they rescued Mahmoud. And they pulled him out of prison. Then what? You have the entire national security apparatus chasing him down. And then his deportation would be absolutely assured if he didn't end up in federal prison for life. Or killed. So what are you even advocating for? What you're saying doesn't even make sense. What we do is we go out there and we raise our voices and we force liberals and fence sitters to take a side. Either they're with the fascists or they're with free speech. Either they're with the right to protest and dissent or they are in favor of authoritarian conservatism. You force people to take a side. You force liberal politicians and judges to take a side. That's the best odds of getting him out and free and back with his family. And if you think a different strategy is warranted, then get off your ass and do something about it. But I don't see you doing that. Just understand, though, that protesting is just, it is mostly a media and persuasion attempt. That is what protests are for. There's a reason why. What did Malcolm X do? When Malcolm X was organizing, what did he do? He got men and women to get in their Sunday best, to get into suits, to get into dresses, to have good hygiene, to look respectable, but then they didn't take no shit. Same thing with Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Act. When they went across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they did so in their Sunday best, with their heads held high, because they wanted people to see that the state was stomping on people that were respectable and upright, but who were demanding their rights. I'm not saying that every protest has to take that form. I'm just saying the purpose of them is to force people to take a side. And by the way, you need to have respectful petitions. Lose. You need to have protests lose for people to be radicalized. I mean, even look at the history of our own country. Was the first thing that they did take up arms and shoot up a bunch of British soldiers? No, they didn't. They escalated through the process. They showed that there was no way that they could reasonably get their grievances addressed. And then and only then were they able to launch a revolution. You have to take people through these steps. Even though I know as a revolutionary leftist that it's not going to work, I still think we need to take regular normies through the process and watch them be frustrated by it in order to give them the feeling that they have to stand up. If you go right to revolution, you're not going to have anybody with you, because they're going to be like, well, why don't we just ask? Why didn't anybody try asking? Why didn't anybody try protesting? It's only after a long process of frustrated reform that you're going to be able to convince people to be in a revolutionary period. And the other thing is, they actually have to be suffering. They can think something is wrong, but until they feel the boot, they're not going to be in a revolutionary mindset. And so that's just the way it goes. That's the way it's always gone. So the best thing you could do right now is get out on the streets and protest and make yourself the best version of that protest that you can be. To put out the best possible image to the world. And that is what we're trying to do. And when they stomp on these protests, when they stomp on these people, when they deny this man due process, when people see the fascism at their gate, then we will talk about things like general strikes and refusing to go to work. Those are the escalatory tactics. And you know what? The government might collapse any time. They might give in at any point, which would be great.
Raise your hand. What is it like living paycheck to paycheck? Who wants to? All right, let me get some hands back there. Be loud. We got a hand there. Okay, ma'am. Stressful. Stay on that issue, sir. You're not sure if you're going to be able to keep the heat on. Yes, ma'am. Trying to find a way to plan a meal until your next paycheck comes. Ma'am? Forget about buying shoes and clothes for your kids. Ma'am? Skipping doctor's visits. Okay, I see a hand back there, sir. Yeah. Fear that your world is going to fall apart, sir. Am I getting glasses or can I get them for my kids? Sir. Can't plan for the future. Hand back there, sir. Okay, psychological warfare. Yes. You make impossible decisions for your family, sir.
General insecurity.
General insecurity. Okay, I think you got it. So let me just tell you something. If we were a poor country, I would come before you and give you a very different speech. I'd say, hey, look, I'm sorry, we're poor. We can't afford decent education, can't afford decent health care. I want you never to forget, we are the richest country in the history of the world. There is no excuse for people dying young because of that stress.
The government from deporting Mahmoud until the court orders otherwise.
But Ramzi, if he is a permanent resident and he's not, hasn't been accused of any lawful violation, what basis do they have, if any, to actually try to revoke his green card?
That is the key question, Juan. Our contention is that this is all retaliatory. The reason he was arrested and detained and targeted for arrest and detention was his constitutionally protected, First Amendment protected speech and activism in support of Palestinian lives and rights in Gaza and beyond. And the fact that he played, as your segment highlighted, a key mediation role between the university administration and student protesters, which, if anything, is laudable. It's commendable. It's what you would want any student to do. So none of that is criminal. The government hasn't even contended really seriously that there's any kind of criminal activity. There's never been an arrest or a conviction that they could point to. As far as we could tell, the government is invoking, and this is a somewhat novel approach, they're invoking the foreign policy grounds, where the Secretary of State is basically saying that this person, who is a non-citizen, who is a permanent resident, by his mere presence or activities in the United States, poses a threat to U.S. foreign policy interests. Now, none of that has been detailed or specified. And frankly, we don't believe it'll fly in court, because that provision of law may exist, but it does not exist to punish constitutionally protected speech. In other words, it doesn't trump Mr. Khalil's First Amendment rights.
And when you hear, for instance, that President Trump on Truth Social said, quote, "We know there are more students at Columbia and other universities across the country who've engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, and anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it." What does this tell you about where we're heading?
Well, look, I mean, we've all sadly become accustomed to the sort of inflammatory and frankly racist rhetoric that emanates from the Trump administration. This is no different. When it comes to Mahmoud, it's all entirely baseless. And both Mahmoud and we on his legal team and all of his supporters, including the 1,000+ people who showed up yesterday, intend to fight to bring him back to New York and to vindicate not just his right to free speech, but everyone's rights to free speech. It can't be the case that saying something that the government disagrees with becomes cause for a night arrest. Well, no one should accept that. And so, we'll fight that tooth and nail. And we don't believe that this case will set the precedent that the government believes it's going to set. It's already backfired. If the intent was to silence speech and to dissuade people from coming out in support of Palestinian human rights, well, we all saw what happened yesterday in Manhattan. Over 1,000 people came out, not just in solidarity with Mahmoud, but also in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza and beyond. And we don't believe that people are going to be deterred, nor is the movement that is critical of the ongoing genocide in Gaza and U.S. foreign policy and its support for Israel, nor is that movement carried mainly by non-citizens. I mean, that's also a falsehood. Americans are the ones who are driving the movement. And of course, there are many non-citizen activists among them, but it's primarily Americans. And so they're not going to be able to deport their way out of this movement.
Can you explain what's going to happen in court tomorrow, Ramzi Qasim? And also, sending him to Louisiana, was that just outright punitive?
Absolutely, Amy. I mean, our view is that his detention itself was punitive and retaliatory for his First Amendment protected speech in support of Palestinian lives and rights. And then subsequently, moving him to Louisiana was retaliatory and punitive because he filed the habeas corpus petition in federal court contesting the legality and constitutionality of his detention. And so the government's response was to try to interfere with the court's jurisdiction, to try to interfere with his access to counsel and to his family and to his support network by moving him 1,000 miles away to Louisiana, where it believes it'll have access to, friendlier immigration courts and whatnot. We hope, even though we don't expect the government to do the reasonable thing and voluntarily bring him back to New York. And if they don't tell us today that they're going to do that, then we'll be in court tomorrow asking the court to order them to do that. And we will litigate the rest of the issues, including the free speech issues, from there.
And what about the Columbia University? Mahmoud lives in Columbia University housing. This direct appeal to the president of Columbia saying he was living in fear, that he couldn't sleep. How could Columbia have protected him? Did ICE enter private Columbia housing illegally?
There have been numerous reports of ICE in various Columbia housing facilities in the last couple of weeks. Some substantiated, some not. That certainly raises a question about Columbia's role. Bigger picture, though,
Columbia was 100% involved. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, there's no question about it.
In the United States. Your daughter's Jewish, some of your grandchildren are Jewish, your son-in-law is Jewish. Jewish students are not safe on many American campuses. Your alma mater, my alma mater, Biden and Harris have ignored this. I mean, they really have ignored it. If you're president, will you send the DOJ to those campuses, the Office of Civil Rights from the Department of Education, to enforce the law?
100%. I mean, the law is being broken, 100%. You wouldn't think you even have this. Did you ever think 2 years ago, 3 years ago that you'd ever have this discussion?
No,
it's unbelievable what's happening. And when you see these riots, and you see a lot of people too, but you know, a lot of the people in that, a lot of those people are Jewish people. You know that they're Jewish kids.
Oh yeah, there are some outliers, but mostly Jewish students are afraid to be overt on places like Harvard and Penn.
That are afraid. Yes, that's true, and they should be afraid. I've never thought I would see this in my life with the campus riots. And
by the way, Hugh Hewitt, MSNBC wanted to give him a show.
And what they're saying and what they're doing. And they have to put them down quickly. They really have to put them down quickly.
They need federal help, though, and that's the Department of Justice. They need a Department of Justice that will prosecute these people that assault Jewish kids. Because assault is, that's real. That's not a protest. That's not the First Amendment assault.
Real. That's real. And they're being assaulted. But look,
it's very funny when people like go into an encampment, start spitting in people's faces, and then say, "I've been assaulted." That's not being assaulted. Also, the idea, by the way, again, there's no proper way to do a protest to a right-winger. There's never been a protest that a right-winger likes. Never. Not one. Throughout history, the right-wingers are always saying the protests are wrong. The only exception to that is January 6th, which was terrorism, which is an attack on the Capitol building to stop the counting of the Electoral College votes. Those people all got pardoned. Somebody on their own campus protesting a foreign country, that's terrorism.
Let me ask you, did you ever think you were going to see this? I mean, I thought this was like semi-ancient stuff, you know.
No, we had demonstrations in the 70s and the 80s, but nothing like this.
Did you ever think you were going to see this again?
No.